So in the last lesson we were talking about nonlinear sequences and how we can use the diatonic intervallic content from G minor pentatonic and use it to create patterns and sequences that move us away from just taking consecutive scale steps and then sequencing that up. Talked about thirds last time. We're just going to keep the ball rolling with fourths and fifths. And the method for figuring out a fourth and fifth is the same as figuring out a third. You're just going to take a first note of the pattern, so G and G minor pentatonic, and then count up 4 notes from there. So G, B flat, C, D. So D is the diatonic fourth up from G and G minor pentatonic. It's an intervallic fifth, but a diatonic fourth. Anyway, keeping it going, so we have B flat here, the next note up in the sequence, so B flat, C, D, F, and F is the diatonic fourth. And then we have C, so then count up 4 from C, so C, D, F, G. G is the diatonic fourth. So then we're just going to take that pattern and then just move it all the way up and down the fretboard. And back down. Cool. So we've already looked at a bunch of different ways that we can manipulate this pattern and come up with different ways to phrase it, etc., etc. So I won't be too exhaustive right now, but remember that we can, there's a bunch of different parameters that we can use. We can manipulate the note values, so phrase it in 16th notes, triplets, dotted 8th notes, etc. We can manipulate where we start it within the pattern and displace the beat, so 16th note off beat, 8th note off beat, etc. We can double notes, we can manipulate rhythms, we can interpolate or just throw in a 16th note triplet and a 16th note pattern. There's a bunch of different ways we can do this. So I'm just going to show you a couple of them just to show this fourth pattern in context. This is a backing track which is G minor 7, C7, and I'm going to just use some 16th notes to phrase this. Cool. Now I'm going to double the first note and keep it 16th notes. Now I'm going to phrase it in triplets. Cool. Alright, so you can see that there's a bunch of different ways to phrase it, especially if you've been paying attention to the other aspects in the previous lessons. So I won't go too much further into that. I just want to be able to show you the other patterns that we can use. Now, the next step, like we talked about in the previous lesson, is to, instead of just always ascend or descend that particular interval, we're talking about the third then, we're talking about the fourth now, you alternate ascending and descending. So normally the first 2 cells in this pattern are G, D, B flat, F, but so both of them are ascending fourths. Now we're going to talk about G, D, F, B flat, so reverse the second one. And so the next one in this new pattern would be C, G, B flat, D instead of C, G, D, B flat. Step a little there. Cool. So then you're gonna, take that and then mess with phrasing, that. Etc. So you get the idea. It's just trying to think of as many different rhythms as you possibly can and apply it to that sequence. Cool. Alright, so now we're coming up on the final interval, which is the fifth, and this one is by far the most awkward because it almost invariably requires string skips on each note, and I'll show you in a second what I mean by that. So we got G to figure out, so we count 5 notes up from G to figure out the fifth pattern. So we got G, B flat, C, D, F. So you notice that already requires a string skip. Can't really talk. So G up to F is the first note in the pattern. So then we figure the next one. So B flat, C, D, F, G. So B flat up to G. is the next note in the fifth pattern, or the next cell in the fifth pattern. And then you're just going to keep that pattern going all the way up and down the neck. And so if you notice, when I'm playing, every note requires a string skip. So this one's going to take a while to get under your fingers, and to be quite frank, I really haven't gotten it as far under my fingers as I should, or as I want to. But after you're practicing that, then you're going to apply the ascending descending pattern. So the first one normally is G, F, B flat, G. This one's now going to be G, F, G, B flat. So it's going to sound like this. Ah. So it's a very, very awkward pattern. But it's interesting, and so in context, it might sound, I don't know, like this. So, I mean, you notice that it feels awkward in a way when you're listening to it, and obviously while you're playing, but that's actually a cool way to create intervallic interest, like it's just going all over the place. So, yeah, experiment with that. Personally, I tend towards the third pattern and the fourth pattern maybe. The fifth pattern is a little harder to really make work just because of how big the interval distances are. But it's a really good way to expand the tonal palette of the minor pentatonic. I mean, it still sounds like a minor pentatonic scale, but it's just completely different than just going up and down the scale kind of randomly. So anyway, those are some more nonlinear sequences that you can work with, and hopefully you got some good ideas from looking at this video.